Eyes blurry, heart pounding in my chest. A taste of iron leaked through my teeth. On the floor a few feet away, my smartphone with the screen unlocked. On it, the number to alert an ambulance, but the call was never started. How did it come to this? My name is Freddie, and just a few months into the pandemic, for a person such as myself, it seemed to be forever. All of my peers tried to keep in touch, adapting as best they could to the uncertainty of the moment, thinking they'd all be just fine, that they would manage to keep things as they were. Yet, that wasn't the case. For a group of friends that finds most of their joy in hanging out, the lack of meeting in person proved fatal. And soon enough, our friendship started deteriorating. It had to change. We settled on a date. Myself, Jesse, Rick, and Diego. The plan was to sneak out at night and spend some time together at a close-by pub that was secretly open despite the virus, the entry being invite only. That night, with Rick telling the bouncer that his uncle shared ownership of the place, we were let in. Our excitement grew by the second we traveled the dark hall preceding the dance floor, the music muffled, but mounting at each step forward. Inside, lights and music blasting, over 60 people were dancing to techno and indie and others drinking at the bar. It was a memorable night, filled with the restless energy we couldn't vent in all these months, now released like a primed spring. Diego even got laid with Jesse, something he'd been trying to do for years now. It all felt so perfect. Later that week, some kind of sickness took me over. Messaging with Rick, my vision started to blur out as the shadow of what felt like anxiety took me over. It was hard to breathe. And for minutes whole, I focused on the effort, but nothing changed. Telling Rick I didn't feel so good, I waited for his message. He said, "Okay, Freddie, take it easy. We're going out next week too." Without the energy to reply, I went to the bathroom to wash my face and hope the anxiety would pass. It wasn't the first time I felt that way. What with the stress of moving out, the work that was never easy, and the difficulties to adapt to working from home. The cold water meeting my skin was not helping, so I dried my face with a towel and took a look in the mirror. My eyes were dark, sunken in my skull, my lips blue and dry. I coughed in my hand, to which a wet sensation in my palm made me look down at it. Crimson red. My blood ran over it. I made to call an ambulance as I walked out of the bathroom, but in my weakness I tripped over the mat and fell over, the phone sliding out of my grasp. Huddling over in a fetal position, I cough once more, blood splatters coming in front of my mouth and all over the floor. With oxygen unable to reach my system because of the virus, my eyes got dark and I fainted in the cold embrace of death. In my mind, the last image I saw was that of my friends' faces, one I will never get to see again. It was a weird day, that one at the start of March 2020. We all knew about the new concerns from the World Health Organizations surrounding a particular strain of the flu, the likes of SARS. Concerns started in January about a new strain of the virus, leaked over onto humans from animals, possibly bats. With fatalities that were hard to predict and an insane spreading capability, the disease was the perfect exploding cigarette fear inducer. That is, referring to an infamous psychological study that asked the subjects if they'd smoke some perfectly healthy cigarettes, risking the chance that one package in 200 contained a bomb in each cigarette, leading to sudden and inevitable death when smoked. The subjects all dropped their smoking habits on the spot, fearing they'd be the ones to receive the bomb package. And yet, the average fatality rate of regular cigarettes is far higher than a mere 1 in 200. The same could be said about COVID-19. as even if the fatalities were relatively new and far between, being the virus, one that followed no clear scheme, greatly amped up the global fear surrounding it. Stephanie and her daughter Denise weren't the only ones going to shop that morning, on the same awful day which the global pandemic was declared. The gates of Walmart still closed. Many were the people crowded around them, over 50 of them, all scared for their lives and anxious to be the first inside. Few words were being traded, and even less glances at each other's faces. It was almost as if the pandemic could turn the others into less than strangers, now that there was a chance they'd be carrying the fatal bomb on their person. That most peculiar fear haunted the single mother and her entity as she held the hand of the girl next to her, both of them terrified what the future had in store for them. It wasn't often Denise saw her mother to be indecisive, let alone scared. And so that day, her whole world seemed to crumble, her emotional anchor unsteady right before her eyes. The gates opened and the pushing began, as all the people tried to cram themselves inside at the same time. Not having a big physical presence, Stephanie felt immediately overpowered by the human wave and its unstoppable force. As she tripped, bringing down herself and the daughter she held by the hand. Unstopping, the stampede ran over her chest and legs and her extended arm too, as she watched her daughter's skull being crushed under the weight of the heavy boot of a man. Erupting in tears and pain in all of her body. Her turn came shortly after as someone stepped on her neck, snapping it in one go. Authorities were contacted, but even having identified the people responsible for the direct death of the two, no blame could be placed in the end. It was either trip or get tripped after all, and stopping would have meant being crushed yourself. With death in their eyes and fear in their hearts, that day, the most terrifying thing about the virus wasn't its power to kill, or the ineffectivity of it. Rather, it was the way others act when they're fearing for their lives. What day is it? Henry thought as he woke up. The clock on the wall marking 7:43 a.m. It's exceedingly hard to keep track of what point of the week one's in after losing their habits for such a long time, like in the case of the worldwide pandemic. Brushing his teeth and combing his hair, the screen of his phone was turned on to check his notifications. The clock widget on it read Tuesday, September 15th, and so he got the answer to his question. The news headlines app he had downloaded made several push notifications appear on his screen. As he swiped right to make them disappear one at a time, unable to read the entirety of their text. Wildfires in Oregon causing over 500,000 people to evacuate. Swipe. Family of Breonna Taylor settles for $12 million over the wrongful debt. Swipe. Worries about Hurricane Sally mounting as it approaches the coast. Swipe. Wildlife comes back to the streets. Watch as this boar famine. Swipe. Nothing too interesting going on that day. Henry wondered how much longer the restrictions were going to last before spitting the toothpaste and washing his mouth with water, putting away the brush. If anything, it's not too bad to work in your underwear, he thought, wearing a button-down shirt and a tie, but neglecting to put his pants on. Home is where the pants aren't, he thought with a giggle before lifting the screen of his laptop and starting the Zoom call with his students. It took him more than the usual couple of hours to be done with work, as online lessons provided new limitations and challenges that weren't present before. But then again, he couldn't complain. Being done for the day, Henry took a beer from the fridge, going outside to his porch to enjoy it on his wooden bench. What a nice day, he thought, enjoying the crisp air coming from the wood, relaxing while looking around. The car, sitting outside on the driveway, wasn't driven in days now. His rigorous meal planning meant shopping not any more than once a week, to avoid any problems with the virus and whatnot. The sky was clean and the temperature chilly, but he didn't mind. A rustle came from the side of him, but after looking, nothing could be seen. Must have been the wind, he thought, going back to another sip of his bottle. A few moments passed, and from the bush to his right, a great shadow emerged. He jumped up with the startle, fixing his eyes on it. A standstill happened for a few seconds as he identified the great beast to be a bear, and the bear identified him. Behind it, or rather, her, was a cub, peeking from the safety of the bush. What followed was a moment of terror, as Henry realized the mother was going to do anything to protect her cub, and so he rushed inside to close the door behind. That quickly proved useless, as the roaring thing pushed her weight against the door, easily swinging it open despite Henry's pushing. As a quick reflex, he turned to sprint away, the burning string of claws swiping at his back. Ignoring the pain, he turned the corner, disappearing from sight. As he came back, the last thing the bear saw was a funny stick pointed in her direction. Henry pulled the trigger, and the loud noise ended her life. Lucky for him, living in the woods meant being paranoid enough to keep a shotgun handy.